I found out my husband had gotten my daughter pregnant on a Tuesday morning. Not from him. Not from her. But from a medical report that wasn't meant for my eyes. The paper trembled in my hands as I read the name of the father listed under emergency contact history. His name. My husband. Her stepfather. The kitchen clock kept ticking like nothing had changed. The sunlight still poured across the table. Outside, a dog barked. Inside me, something died. But here's the part they didn't know. I had been underestimated my entire life. And I had learned, quietly, how to prepare for moments like this. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand how we got here. And while you're listening, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever discovered something about your own family that made your world tilt sideways? I read every comment. And if you believe in protecting your peace, no matter what, press like. Because this story, it's about that. I grew up in a house where silence meant survival. My parents believed in hierarchy. My older brother was the golden child, athletic, loud, confident. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who cleaned up after everyone else's mistakes. If something broke, I fixed it. If someone cried, I comforted them. If something went wrong, somehow, it was my fault. I learned early that speaking up only made things worse. So, I learned something better. I learned to observe. I learned to document. I learned to prepare. By 16, I was managing the household budget better than my mother. By 22, I was the first in my family to graduate college. No celebration, just a nod of approval and a reminder not to get too proud. When I married Daniel, I thought I was finally choosing something for myself. He was calm, charismatic, older, steady. After years of chaos, steady felt safe. I had my daughter, Maya, from a previous relationship. Her biological father had left before she turned 2. Daniel came into our lives when she was 8. At first, he seemed patient with her. Kind. He helped with homework. Showed up to school plays. I watched closely, always. But I also wanted to believe. When you grow up always expecting betrayal, you get tired. You start craving normal. Stability. A partner who doesn't shout. Daniel never shouted. He just controlled. Little things at first. He handled the finances to make it easier. He encouraged Maya to come to him with problems instead of me. He told me I worked too much, that I worried too much. And slowly, I started doubting myself. Years passed. Maya grew into a beautiful, quiet young woman. Too quiet sometimes. She had my eyes. But lately they avoided mine. I blamed it on teenage distance. Until the morning I found the report. It started with nausea. Maya had been sick for weeks. She insisted it was stress from college applications. She had just turned 19, legally an adult, but still my child. One afternoon, she fainted in her room. Daniel wasn't home. I drove her to urgent care. They asked routine questions. She wouldn't answer, just stared at the floor. When the nurse handed me paperwork to sign, I saw the pregnancy confirmation box checked. My heart slammed against my ribs. Pregnant. I turned to her slowly. She wouldn't look at me. Who is the father? I asked. Her hands started shaking. Silence. The room felt too small. Then the nurse returned and mentioned that the father's information is already in the file from the insurance records. Insurance records. Daniel managed the insurance. I waited until Maya was resting in the exam room before I stepped into the hallway and asked to review the documentation. I told them I handled the policy. The receptionist hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. Under emergency contact and partner disclosure. Daniel's full name. My husband. Her stepfather. For a second, the hallway disappeared. There was only ringing in my ears. No, this had to be a clerical mistake. But deep down, something colder whispered the truth. I drove home in silence. Maya sat in the passenger seat, pale, eyes fixed forward. When we pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was already there. He stepped out onto the porch, smiling. That same calm smile. How'd it go? He asked casually. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He didn't look nervous. He looked prepared. That was when I knew this wasn't an accident. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't some tragic misunderstanding. This had been building for a long time. That night, I confronted Maya alone in her bedroom. The door was closed. The house quiet. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands clenched. Maya, I said gently. Look at me. She couldn't. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. It's not what you think, she whispered. That sentence. The oldest lie in the world. Then tell me what it is, I replied. Her voice trembled. He said you wouldn't understand. A sharp, controlled breath escaped my lungs. How long? I asked. Tears slid down her cheeks. I don't know, she said. It just happened. Nothing like this just happens. But she was overwhelmed, confused, scared. And I saw something else in her face. Not love. Not rebellion. Fear. The kind of fear that comes from manipulation. And suddenly, my anger shifted direction. This wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated. Daniel had slowly isolated her, positioned himself as the safe adult, the trusted one. I replayed every dinner conversation. Every time, he dismissed my concerns. Every time he encouraged her to keep little secrets. My stomach twisted. I wanted to storm downstairs. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because that's what he would expect. He always underestimated my silence. He thought quiet meant weak. He forgot quiet can also mean planning. That night, I lay in bed beside him. He slept peacefully. I stared at the ceiling in the dark. The air felt heavy, thick. Beside me was the man who had infiltrated my home, my trust, my daughter's mind. And he thought he was in control. But what Daniel didn't know was this. Before we married, I had insisted on keeping certain assets in my name. I had kept copies of everything, financial statements, insurance logs, email backups. Years ago, when he started managing the money, I quietly enrolled in evening legal literacy courses. He teased me for it. Planning to become a lawyer now, he'd laugh. I would smile. He never checked what I was studying. I also had a separate savings account he didn't know about. Old habits from childhood die hard. Document everything. Prepare quietly. Never show your full hand. And now I had a reason to use everything I had learned. But I needed proof. Not emotion. Not accusation. Proof. Because when I moved, I intended to end this completely. For my daughter. For myself. And for every year I had stayed silent in someone else's shadow. The next morning, Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work. I'm here for you, he said softly. I almost laughed at the performance. Instead, I nodded. After he drove away, I walked into his home office. I stood there for a long moment. The room smelled faintly of his cologne and printer ink. My hands were steady now. No shaking. No tears. Just clarity. On his desk sat his laptop. Locked. He always believed I didn't understand technology. He forgot who set up his passwords 10 years ago. As I powered it on, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just confrontation anymore. This was strategy. And what I found inside that computer would change everything. But that part comes next. When his laptop screen lit up, I didn't rush. Slow movements. Steady breathing. Daniel always believed I was emotional. Reactive. Soft. He never noticed how observant I was. His password hadn't changed. Still the same combination of his college football number and his ego. The desktop opened. Emails. Folders. Financial spreadsheets. Normal at first glance. But predators don't store secrets in obvious places. They hide them in plain sight. I started with the insurance portal. The pregnancy record hadn't been a mistake. He had listed himself months ago as an authorized guardian for medical decisions regarding Maya. Months. Which meant this hadn't just happened. My chest tightened, but I kept scrolling. Then I found a private email account logged in through the browser. Not his main one. A second account. I opened it. And there it was. Messages to Maya. Late-night messages. Manipulative messages. You're more mature than your mother. She doesn't understand how special you are. Some connections are meant to be secret. I had to pause. The room felt smaller. This wasn't seduction. It was grooming. Calculated. Layered. Slow. I scrolled further. There were transfers. Small amounts of money sent to Maya through a digital wallet. Labeled as college support. But the timestamps matched nights when I had been out of town for work. That's when the anger turned cold. Cold anger is different. It doesn't scream. It plans. Before I tell you what I did next, let me explain something. Daniel believed he controlled everything because he handled the finances. What he didn't know was that 2 years ago, when he convinced me to let him consolidate our investments, I kept independent copies of every account number, every property deed, every signature page. And I had something else. My old college friend, Layla. Layla now worked in family law in Toronto. We hadn't spoken in months. But when I called her that afternoon, she answered on the first ring.
I didn't cry. I didn't yell.
I simply said, hypothetically, if a stepfather impregnated his 19-year-old stepdaughter, what would that mean legally? Silence on the line. Then her voice changed. Serious. Sharp. Is she under any pressure? She asked. Yes, I said. Do you have proof? Not yet, I replied. Then don't confront him fully, she warned. Gather everything. Quietly. And protect her first. Protect her first. That sentence anchored me. Because here's the complicated truth. Maya was legally an adult, which meant he would try to frame this as consensual. But consent built through years of manipulation isn't real consent. And I intended to prove it. That evening, Daniel suggested a family meeting. The audacity almost impressed me. He stood in the living room, calm as ever. We need to discuss this situation like adults, he said. Maya sat curled on the couch, eyes red. I took the armchair across from him. What situation? I asked evenly. He looked at me carefully. This pregnancy, he said. We need to think about what's best.
Best.
As if he were discussing a business merger. Maya's fingers twisted together nervously. He reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder. I watched her flinch. Just slightly.
But I saw it. He didn't.
Because men like Daniel never notice the details that expose them. I care about her, he continued. We care about each other. My pulse slowed instead of rising. That confused him. He expected tears.
Rage.
Drama. Instead, I asked, when did it start? He hesitated for half a second. Recently, he said.
Lie.
I already knew it had been at least 6 months. Maybe longer. Maya opened her mouth, then closed it. He squeezed her shoulder slightly. Control. I leaned forward. If you care about her, I said quietly, you'll give her space. Starting tonight. He studied me. Calculating. But he agreed. Because he believed he still had influence over her mind. And maybe he did. But not over mine anymore. That night, I moved Maya into my bedroom and locked the door. She finally broke down. Full sobs. I didn't know how to stop it, she whispered. He said you'd leave us, if you found out. That sentence cut deeper than anything else. He had used me as the threat. He said you'd be ashamed. I closed my eyes briefly. Years of subtle isolation. Years of positioning himself as her emotional protector. Classic manipulation. I didn't attack her. I didn't shame her. I just said, you are not the one who should be ashamed. And for the first time since this started, she looked at me. Really looked at me. That was the moment I knew I could win this. Not by screaming, but by restoring her clarity. Over the next few days, I gathered evidence. Screenshots of emails, financial transfers, phone logs. I even installed discrete monitoring software on our shared home network. He underestimated my technical skills. Again. And then I found something worse. A draft document. A cohabitation agreement template. He had been researching how to protect his assets in case of relationship complications. He was preparing to frame this as a romantic relationship gone wrong. Not abuse. Not grooming. A relationship. My hands went still. This man was planning his defense before I had even confronted him, which meant he had done this before in smaller ways. Maybe not with pregnancy, but with control. The tension in the house thickened. We barely spoke. Daniel started acting overly affectionate in front of Maya. Public displays of calm. He wanted witnesses to see harmony. He was building his narrative. But he didn't know I was building mine too. 3 days later, he announced something unexpected. We should have dinner at my parents' house this Sunday, he said casually. A family gathering. Perfect audience. His parents adored him. Successful businessman. Respectable. Generous. He wanted public sympathy. He wanted to control the story before I could. And that's when I made my decision. I would let him think he was winning. I would attend that dinner. I would smile. I would let him speak first. Because men like Daniel always talk too much when they think they're safe. And by Sunday night, he would no longer feel safe. But what I revealed at that dinner, that's where everything changed. Sunday dinner at his parents' house felt like walking into a courtroom. The house in suburban Toronto was warm, lights glowing softly, the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary filling the air. His mother hugged me tightly. His father poured wine like this was just another family evening. Daniel played his role perfectly.
Calm.
Supportive. Attentive. Maya sat beside me, quiet but steadier than before. I had told her only one thing that morning. You don't have to speak tonight. I will. Before I tell you how the room shifted, understand this. I didn't come to scream. I came prepared. In my handbag were printed email exchanges, bank transfer logs, insurance authorization forms dated months back, screenshots of his private account, and most importantly, a written statement Maya had agreed to give a lawyer the following morning. Not emotional words.
Facts.
Carefully organized facts.
Dinner started normally.
Small talk. Weather. Work updates. Then Daniel cleared his throat. I think we should address something, he said gently, reaching for Maya's hand. I watched his mother's expression soften. His father leaned forward, concerned. Maya and I have developed feelings, Daniel continued. It's complicated, but she's an adult. We didn't plan this. There it was. His narrative.
Soft.
Romantic. Mutual. His mother gasped lightly. His father looked stunned, but not angry. Just confused. Daniel kept speaking, building sympathy. We care about each other. And with the baby coming, we need support, not judgment. Support. For a second, no one noticed that Maya had pulled her hand away. That was when I set my wine glass down. The small sound of glass touching would echoed louder than it should have. I agree, I said calmly. We should focus on facts. Daniel's eyes flickered toward me. He didn't like that word.
Facts.
I opened my handbag slowly and placed a folder on the dining table. His father frowned. What is this? Documentation? I replied. The room grew quiet. I slid the first page across the table, the insurance authorization dated 8 months earlier. Daniel registered himself as Maya's medical guardian long before this pregnancy, I said evenly. His mother blinked. Why would he do that? Daniel shifted in his seat. That's just paperwork. I raised my hand gently. I'm not finished. Then I placed printed emails on the table. Highlighted phrases. You're more mature than your mother. She wouldn't understand what we have. Some connections must stay secret. His father's face drained of color. Maya stared at the table, breathing steadily. Daniel laughed nervously. Private conversations taken out of context. Of a stepfather speaking to his teenage stepdaughter? I asked quietly. The word teenage hung in the air. His mother's fork slipped from her hand. I continued, my voice calm, almost detached. There are also financial transfers. Late-night visits logged through the home security system. And drafts of a cohabitation agreement prepared before I ever confronted you. Daniel's composure cracked, just slightly. You went through my computer, he snapped. There it is, I said softly. The mask slipped. His father looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time that night. Daniel, he said slowly. When did this start? Silence. Not controlled silence. Panicked silence. Maya finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. I was 18, she said. But he started telling me I was special long before that. That sentence changed everything. The air felt heavy. His mother began to cry. Daniel stood abruptly. This is insane. She wanted this. Enough, his father barked. That was the moment power shifted. Not with yelling. With clarity. I slid one final document forward. A consultation appointment with a criminal attorney, I said. Tomorrow morning. And copies of everything you see here have already been sent to my lawyer. Daniel stared at me. He had believed I would break. Instead, I had built a case. You wouldn't destroy your family like this, he whispered. I looked at him steadily. You already did. The fallout was not cinematic. It was procedural. Legal meetings. Statements. Quiet interviews. Because Maya was legally an adult, the case became complex. But the documented grooming, financial manipulation, and abuse of authority shifted everything. Daniel's parents hired their own attorney. By the end of the week, Daniel had moved out. By the end of the month, our joint accounts were frozen pending investigation. By the end of the year, he faced charges related to coercion and exploitation under Canadian law. His reputation collapsed quietly. No dramatic headlines. Just silence from former colleagues. Whispers at networking events. Contracts withdrawn. Men like Daniel survive on image. And image dissolves quickly under documentation. Maya began therapy. The first few sessions were heavy. Shame doesn't disappear overnight. But slowly, she began reclaiming her voice. The pregnancy. She made her own decision. And for the first time, it was truly hers. Not manipulated. Not pressured. Hers. I supported her, whatever she chose. Because this wasn't about controlling her life. It was about restoring her agency. As for me, I sold the house. Moved into a smaller place closer to the lake. Quiet mornings. Coffee by the window. No tension in the walls. Sometimes people ask me if I feel angry. I don't. Anger is loud. What I feel is clarity. I learned something important through all of this. Silence is not weakness. Preparation is not paranoia. And love without boundaries is not love, it's surrender. Daniel underestimated me because I didn't shout, because I didn't dominate rooms, because I let him think he was in control. But here's the truth. The quiet ones are often the most prepared. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone mistook your patience for weakness, remember this. Documentation is power. Boundaries are protection. And peace is the ultimate revenge. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? And have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and defending your self-worth? Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait and then move with precision.